Let me tell you something. That can change the direction of your entire life. In a single day. Not a new habit. Not a productivity system. Not some secret strategy hidden in a book somewhere. Just a few powerful realizations that, when fully felt, can break years of stagnation and create movement where there was once only paralysis. Most people believe change happens gradually. And often it does. But the biggest turning points usually begin in a moment. A moment when something inside you finally shifts. A moment when you can no longer tolerate what you once accepted. A moment when your mind sees reality clearly and decides it can no longer remain the same. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that circumstances rarely transform a person overnight. But a new way of seeing those circumstances can. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that life is shaped not only by what happens, but by the judgments we make about what happens. This is why the most important changes are invisible at first. They begin long before the world notices. They begin in thought, in perspective, in the quiet decision to stop living the same way. What makes these moments so powerful is that they rarely look dramatic. From the outside, the same room, the same responsibilities, the same circumstances. Yet internally, a line has been crossed. An old excuse loses its power. A new standard is set. Think about how many people spend years waiting for the perfect opportunity. They wait for motivation. They wait for confidence. They wait for circumstances to improve. Yet months pass. Sometimes years. And the future they were waiting for never arrives in the form they imagined. Meanwhile, the habits that created their current situation quietly continue. This is why the ancient Stoics placed so much importance on seeing reality clearly. Not the reality shaped by wishful thinking. Reality as it actually exists. As long as something remains vague, it can be ignored. But the moment something becomes clear, responsibility enters the picture. Suddenly, there is nowhere to hide. And this realization can sting. Yet it contains a strange kind of freedom. If your actions helped create the situation, your actions can also help change it. Many people spend enormous energy protecting themselves from uncomfortable truths. Not because they are weak, but because the mind prefers familiar discomfort to unfamiliar change. That is why denial often feels easier than honesty. Yet every form of growth begins with the willingness to look directly at what is actually there. There are moments in life when this confrontation arrives unexpectedly. You look around one ordinary afternoon and suddenly notice something you have been overlooking for months. Nothing external has changed. Yet everything feels different. Because perception has shifted. The Stoics never viewed discomfort as an enemy. They understood that growth and discomfort often travel together. As Carl Jung observed, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is often where genuine change begins. Not with confidence. Not with inspiration. With honesty. And once you have truly seen clearly, you can no longer fully return to ignorance. The excuses no longer sound as convincing as they once did. Now here is a question worth sitting with. What do you do when pretending becomes impossible? Eventually, something begins to feel dishonest about the story. That things will improve on their own. As Epictetus observed, how long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? Many people assume difficult decisions are painful because they do not know enough. In reality, they often know far more than they admit. The problem is not always a lack of information. Sometimes it is an unwillingness to accept what that information requires. This is why the mind often searches for additional certainty long after certainty was necessary. It keeps analyzing. It keeps preparing. Not because preparation is useful, but because preparation feels safer than commitment. There comes a point where additional thinking no longer improves clarity. It simply delays action. This cycle creates a unique kind of exhaustion. Constant indecision drains energy without producing movement. Then something surprising happens. The moment a decision is finally made, relief arrives. Not because every problem disappears, but because the conflict begins to settle. The Stoics understood that certainty is not a prerequisite for action. In fact, certainty is often unavailable. Wisdom is not the ability to eliminate uncertainty. Wisdom is the ability to move forward despite it. Yet even after making a decision, another challenge appears. You can know exactly what needs to be done, and still fail to do it. This is where desire enters the picture. Desire is not merely preference. It is the force that gives energy to action. Without it, even the best plans struggle to survive. The interesting thing about desire is that it cannot be forced. It emerges under certain conditions, often unexpectedly. Sometimes it awakens after disappointment. Sometimes it arrives while reflecting on how quickly time has passed. 1 year becomes 5. 5 becomes 10. There is a difference between understanding that life is short and actually feeling it. As this recognition grows, desire begins changing shape. It becomes less dependent on external rewards and more connected to inner standards. A person starts caring about who they are becoming through their actions. Progress matters, but character matters more. Something else begins to happen. When desire reaches this level, attention changes. Someone committed to growth sees lessons where others see inconveniences. The world has not changed. The observer has. Once a person genuinely wants something, their relationship with effort begins to transform. Tasks that once felt burdensome start feeling meaningful. Desire does not eliminate resistance, but it provides a reason to move through it. The Stoics understood this deeply. They observed that events do not arrive with fixed meanings attached. Meaning is something the mind assigns afterward. Two people can encounter the same criticism. One carries it for months, replaying every word. The other listens carefully, extracts what is useful, and leaves the rest behind. The criticism is identical. The difference exists in the interpretation. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. There is a reason Some people appear remarkably calm during situations that overwhelm others. They have developed a different relationship with adversity. They understand that difficulties are not interruptions to life. They are part of life. As this perspective develops, fear begins changing as well. The goal is not to eliminate fear entirely. The goal is to prevent it from controlling the direction of your life. Confidence grows, not because success is guaranteed, but because you trust your ability to handle whatever comes next. As Epictetus observed, do not explain your philosophy. Embody it. The mind can understand a truth for years, while behavior remains unchanged. The answer is rarely found in acquiring additional knowledge. More often, it is found in applying what is already known. The challenge begins because action carries risk. The moment you move beyond thinking and start doing, uncertainty becomes real. The Stoics never defined courage as the absence of fear. Courage begins when fear is acknowledged, but not obeyed. Many people underestimate the importance of evidence. The mind pays close attention to behavior. It watches what a person repeatedly does and forms conclusions based on those actions. This is why seemingly small decisions matter so much. Making a phone call, starting a project, following through on a commitment. Each one sends a message. Not through words, but through behavior. There is another benefit to action that often goes unnoticed. Action creates momentum. The first step is often the hardest, because it requires overcoming inertia. After that, movement tends to create additional movement. This explains why waiting for motivation is often ineffective. Motivation is inconsistent. Action operates differently. It relies less on emotion and more on commitment. Now something deeper begins to emerge. Every action taken consistently begins shaping the relationship you have with yourself. Every promise kept strengthens trust. Over time, these moments accumulate into something far more valuable than external achievement. They create self-respect. Confidence built entirely on external factors remains fragile. It depends on circumstances remaining favorable. The moment those conditions change, the confidence begins to weaken. Trusting yourself is earned the same way trust is earned between people. Through consistency, through reliability, through repeated evidence. Every time you follow through on something difficult, the mind takes note. Gradually, a new belief begins forming. The belief that your words can be trusted. That your values are more than ideas. Integrity has a remarkable effect on daily life. There is a quiet strength that emerges when actions consistently reflect values. It creates clarity because fewer internal conflicts exist. This is why self-respect is such a powerful form of success. It changes the standard by which life is measured. Instead of constantly asking whether enough has been achieved, a person begins asking whether they are becoming someone they admire. Which brings us to the final realization. The life most people hope for is rarely created. Through a single breakthrough, real change usually unfolds. In a quieter way. It emerges through repeated decisions that seem insignificant when viewed individually. As Aristotle observed, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. The Stoics viewed life as a continuous practice, rather than a single achievement. Every day presented another opportunity to act according to reason, rather than impulse. This does not mean obsessing over every small choice. It means recognizing their cumulative effect. Every action becomes meaningful through this lens. Not because every action is dramatic, but because every action contributes to identity. Human beings become what they repeatedly do. As Epictetus reminded his students, make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. Progress becomes less overwhelming, because it is no longer measured against distant ideals. It is measured against present responsibility. Perhaps this is the most important lesson of all. Lasting change is rarely created through extraordinary moments alone. It is created through ordinary moments, handled well. The future is not built all at once. It is built one thought, one choice, and one action at a time. And sooner than most people realize, those small decisions become a completely different life. If this reached something inside you today, share it with someone who is still waiting for the perfect moment to begin. Like this video, because this kind of clarity deserves to reach further than it will without your help. And subscribe to True Stoic Journal, because what comes next goes even deeper into building a life shaped by daily discipline. And it will be waiting in your feed very soon. Remember this: a different life does not begin when circumstances change. It begins when you do. It begins the moment you stop waiting, stop negotiating with yourself, and start acting in alignment with the person you already know you can become.